I first want to welcome all of the attendees for coming today. My name is Mike Simons. I'm with a company called Abode, and we are helping the city of Cambridge with encouraging and promoting solutions and providing technical support for their residents to adopt clean heating technologies. We put together this webinar to just really help firm up an understanding of air source heat pumps as well as solar hot water systems. The format today is we'll do these brief introductions, then we'll dive deep into air source heat pumps, then talk about solar hot water solutions, and then we'll be answering all of the Q&A questions that come in throughout the chat. So I'll turn it back over to you, Nikhil, to take it from here.
So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Nikhil Nadkarni. I'm an energy planner at the Cambridge Community Development Department. We're at 344 Broadway, a building which many of you might be familiar with. I work on some of our energy efficiency and clean energy programs here at the city. And yeah, welcome to Cambridge Clean Heat. We'll tell you about our new program for clean heating and cooling. Next slide. So just as a bit of background, Cambridge Energy Alliance is the city's initiative for helping residents and small businesses connect to energy efficiency and clean energy opportunities. And so over the past couple of years, we've been able to develop some programs for homeowners, renters, condo owners, and landlords. So, you know, we have a wide range of housing types in Cambridge, and we want to really help people connect to their different opportunities and help people with their energy needs. Next slide, please. So let me provide a little bit of background or overview about some of those programs. So there's a no-cost energy assessment that some of you might be familiar from Mass Save. We work with a home performance contractor and a great nonprofit called All In Energy to help renters and owners in 1 to 4 unit buildings understand some of those energy saving opportunities and also do some of those no-cost measures at the time of the visit. We also have Sunny Cambridge, which is a program that we launched a couple of years ago to help people understand their solar options, their community solar options, so people are able to get quotes for their roof. Depending on the type of situation, they can also access some free advising services to help people navigate different options. And for people who aren't able to install solar themselves on their own roof, there's community solar in which you can sort of buy a share of a group solar project offsite, including a new program we have for low and moderate income residents that are interested in solar. There's also the Community Choice Electricity Program that many of you might be familiar with. This is the also known as the municipal aggregation. And we have a 100% Green Plus option, which is a great way of accessing renewable energy that comes from entirely New England-based renewable energy generating assets. And the Community Choice Electricity Program, including the Green Plus program, are working towards building a solar project in Cambridge that would then feed into this, the pool of residents that are buying clean energy. And finally, we have the Multifamily Energy Program for buildings of 5 units and more. And that's received a lot of interest over the last couple of months, where we have, and in that program, we have a technical advisor that can help buildings navigate energy efficiency projects, solar projects, help them, look at different opportunities. And yeah, if that's applicable to your building, that might be something that we can connect you to. But in general, I would say if you're interested in any of these programs, in addition to clean heating, feel free to visit cambridgeenergyalliance.org. The other approach, of course, is if you're working with Mike and team on clean heating and you're also interested in these other things, just mention it to Mike and I'm sure he can connect you to us or to the program that you're interested in. Next slide, please. So why are we creating a new clean heating and cooling program in addition to all of the other programs? So we've noticed over I would say the past 2 or 3 years that more and more residents have been reaching out to us to ask about heat pumps and solar hot water. Some of the key questions have been, how do I pick the right product for my house? How do I find a qualified installer? How do I access the right incentives. And so we really wanted to bring on board a technical advisor to serve as a resource for Cambridge residents, and to provide kind of an independent voice, right? Independent guidance, so that we aren't just referring people to installers that are, quote unquote, selling something. The other aspect of creating a new program is that heating and cooling is over 50% of our energy use in Cambridge, in our buildings as a community. So all of the other stuff, refrigeration, lighting, computers, all of that, that's less than half of our energy use. And some of you may be aware that in 2015, the City Council adopted the Net Zero Action Plan that lays out strategies and calls for programs to get us to net zero across all of our buildings by 2050. And energy efficiency and clean energy will be a big part of how we get there. So we're really excited to support residents that are interested in taking that step of switching to clean heating and cooling, and picking an option that's efficient for their home and cutting their carbon impact. So we started a pilot of Cambridge Clean Heat in 2019, kind of a small version that some of you might be aware of. And then last year, we were able to bring on Abode, and we're really excited to have this partnership with Abode Energy to really expand and improve upon the program. Abode has a tremendous amount of expertise in both energy efficiency and clean heating, and they've worked with a lot of municipalities elsewhere throughout Massachusetts and a bunch of different communities. So we're really excited to have them on board to provide that resource to Cambridge residents, and to be that independent technical advisor to help you navigate some of the different questions you might have. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Simons. But thanks so much for joining us this evening to learn about heat pumps and solar hot water.
Thanks so much, Nikhil. Yeah, as Abode said, as Nikhil said about Abode, we're a residential energy efficiency company in Massachusetts. Most of our work is overseeing the Mass Save home performance contractors. So we provide all the quality assurance, make sure all the right customers are being served in the program. When COVID hit, we did a lot of work virtually to figure out how to be able to run effective virtual energy assessments. And just the other things that we like to do is we're a Building Performance Institute test center. We help kind of emerging professionals get the certifications that they need to be able to go out and make appropriate recommendations on how to improve the energy efficiency as well as the mechanical systems of people's homes. A little bit about me. So I've been in this space, in this world for the last 10 years. I ended up running over 1,000 energy audits myself, trained about 100 new energy advisors. I like to speak at national conferences about this type of stuff. And just on a personal level, I'm a homeowner. Next week, my 6 ductless mini splits are being installed, and I can't wait. I'm also going solar PV this year. I've just changed up all the windows of my home to high efficiency ones. I've had my entire house weatherized. So I think I've been through, and I'm still on, a lot of the same journey that I think a lot of you may be interested in. Another thing about me is I've never sold a heat pump, I've never installed a heat pump, and I've never serviced a heat pump. So I do think that it's really important that as you are moving down this process or with any of the technologies, and that's also true with solar hot water systems, that you do find an installer that you can trust, that communicates, that's responsive, because those are the people that are, that are going to be getting you the next 10 or 20 years of life out of these systems. My background with training, with energy efficiency, it's a lot of technical information. So I will be sharing a bunch of that with you today. And I do want to just say that hopefully this is just the first time that you see me and hear from me and not the last time. So on the Cambridge Clean Heat website, if you log on to it, there's always a pop-up that greets you that allows you to book a no-cost consultation with me. We start with a half an hour of time where I learn about your home, your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, whether or not there's rebates, incentives, other programs for you to take advantage of. And once I kind of get my head wrapped around all of that stuff, I'll kind of lay out some next steps on whether or not air source heat pumps or solar hot water systems will make sense for your home. So I do hope that a lot of you, right after this webinar, and if the technology does seem like it's a good fit for your home, hops on the website and can book a no-cost consultation with me from there. One of the consultations that I recently had is a customer who lives in the Strawberry Hill neighborhood of Cambridge. What I really love about this project is, one, the house, when you look, when I was pulling up for the first time, I was thinking that I was going to be seeing this, like, you know, house of the future, because this customer is adopting solar PV. There's solar thermal on the roof. There's all new, you know, all new siding. There's 2 different heat pump systems. But I drove right past it. And I think that's kind of like exciting that in some ways, all of these technologies, they blend into the architectural fabric of Cambridge. There's nothing crazy or foreign or really looks all that different about any of this stuff from the outside. So I do think that that's actually a, you know, an interesting thing to kind of keep in mind, that these types of technology, they really do integrate quite well into the Cambridge housing stock. So just a little bit of what we're looking at over here is just up on the top right. Up on the top right, the customer installed evacuated tube solar collectors. These types of solar hot water system is likely going to be replacing somewhere between 75 to 80% of her domestic hot water energy cost. She also ended up installing 2 separate air source heat pumps, one for the first unit on the first floor, one for the second floor. And I think what's great about this project is a lot of people think air source heat pumps, they think of ductless mini splits, but she opted for doing whole home systems. There's no longer any fossil fuels that's providing heating for the home or domestic hot water. These things are all electric, and they're going to be operating, you know, quite efficiently with heating and cooling. And we'll get into the actual specifics of what that looks like shortly. All right, so we're first going to be talking about air source heat pumps. And I have this deck a little bit formatted in a way of kind of why do I get, you know, question and answer. So why is the city of Cambridge so excited about air source heat pumps? This is the big term that makes these systems like really quite magical. So with your traditional heating system, so say that you buy a gallon of home heating oil. You put that gallon of home heating oil into an oil burner or an oil furnace or an oil boiler, and you get out about 87% max of the energy inside of that gallon of home heating oil to then go into the distribution system of your home. So up registers or up steam pipes into radiators or, you know, around baseboards. But with a heat pump, they have this, because they're not just using electricity to generate heat, but to move heat, there's a term called coefficient of performance. And what that means is when you put in 1 unit of electricity or 1 unit of fuel, how many units of energy, useful heat energy, can be extracted into the home. So while all of the fossil fuel-based systems, so with natural gas, the very most efficient system on the market today is 97% efficient, with a well-designed air source heat pump in Massachusetts, that would be like 270% efficient. If you were putting it in Rhode Island, maybe 280% efficient. If you're putting it in Delaware, maybe it'd be 310% efficient. So it's just remarkable with these technologies. You put in 1 unit of energy, and then it puts out nearly 3 units of heat. So what that actually looks like, if we did just look with today's how much we spend in utilities. So with like natural gas, $1.45 a therm, air source heat pumps, 22 cents per kilowatt. Like, what does that actual chunk of energy look like? This is kind of what it looks like. So with air source heat pumps, their cost comparative to natural gas. They're more affordable to heat with than home heating oil or propane or electric resistance. But the big thing is that you're not wasting a chunk of energy. And if natural gas prices go up, that kind of like big Pac-Man becomes a smaller looking Pac-Man, and maybe air source heat pumps wins on the most cost effective one. But the other thing that's exciting in Massachusetts is we do have abilities to get control of our electricity prices, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other reason why the city of Cambridge is so excited about air source heat pumps and why this program is called Clean Heat is because they produce significantly less CO2 equivalent emissions than the other fossil fuel-based systems. So compared to natural gas, 40% less emissions. Compared to home heating oil, over 50% less emissions. And the exciting thing about Massachusetts is we're adopting more renewables every single year. So whether or not they're coming down from hydropower from Quebec, or we get offshore wind installed off of Martha's Vineyard, or whether or not the price of solar keeps dropping and dropping and dropping, and more large-scale solar gets on the grid, our grid's getting cleaner. And air source heat pumps is the only technology. As the grid gets cleaner, the heating system gets cleaner as well. So there's no way to get anywhere close to kind of the climate goals that the city has and the state has if we're keeping all of the residents on these existing fossil fuel-based heating systems, because it takes up such a large portion, heating our home, of our, of our carbon footprint. So how does a heat pump work? And it's a little bit technical, but hopefully I can explain it for you guys. So we'll start with the fact that everyone, sorry, that hopped forward, is that everyone inside of their home has a heat pump already, and that's their refrigerator. So a refrigerator simply works by taking the heat that's inside of the box, and it just moves it to the outside of the box. So what happens is your food that was 40 degrees when you put it in, it removes that heat and it dumps it into your kitchen. So a central AC works the same way. It takes the heat that's inside of your home, and then it through the refrigeration process and moving it through ductwork, it moves it to the outside of the home through a compressor. An air source heat pump works the exact same way. It takes the hot air inside of your home and it dumps it to the outside. Or in the winter time, and this is really interesting. So say 0 degrees is a lot colder than 30 degrees. So that 30-degree air that's cold still has a lot more energy than 0-degree air does. So how an air source heat pump works in heating mode is it creates a negative 30-degree refrigerant. That negative 30-degree refrigerant warms up as the 0-degree air passes over it, and then it just brings that refrigerant inside. It pressurizes the heck out of it, and as you increase pressure, you end up increasing temperature, and then that's how it is able to move heat into the, move energy from outside to the inside. And it works really well. So as we said before, the annualized coefficient of performance of these systems, you put in 1 unit of electricity, you're getting out about 2.7 units of heat. And that becomes, cost competitive to natural gas, beats home heating oil, and it works quite well. This question is pretty controversial, and it's can a heat pump replace my existing system? So this is talking about whether or not we can take out your gas steam boiler and put in a heat pump. So I want to start with this as a concept. Both of these automobiles can get you exactly where you need to go. But both of these automobiles likely serve 2 different functions and have different features. So what I want to just set the primer for is that a heat pump may work slightly different than your existing heating system. But we'll hop on this next point, which is hugely important. So a furnace that we see on the left-hand side of this slide That may be an 80,000 BTU furnace. So like heat units in energy efficiency world is measured in BTUs. So that unit can put out 80 BTUs worth of energy every hour and dump that into your home. The steam boiler that's right next to it, for that exact same home, it probably needs to be 120,000 BTUs. That system is going to lose 40,000 BTUs by just heating up all the steel and cast iron to even move the steam into your home before any steam will come out of the radiator. So steam boilers need to be kind of massively oversized to what the actual home needs. The next boiler that we're looking at, that one's probably 50,000 BTUs, because with hydronics, you're not losing all of the heat through duct losses. The system that we're looking on the right is a heat pump. In that system, maybe 36,000 BTUs. And it may be a question like, well, if the hydronic boiler that fed the baseboards is 40,000 and this unit on the right-hand side is only 36,000, how on earth is that going to be able to like heat my home? But a lot of homes in Cambridge are quite old, and the home may have originally needed 40,000 BTUs, but something that's true with a heat pump is that, or with your home, is that you've probably had mass save out and insulated the walls, buttoned up the basement, replaced the single pane windows. So that heat pump has no problem putting out 36,000 BTUs. And the other RIA, and that's what your home likely needs. And this is really what our program is all about, is figure out how much the home needs today and size the heat pump accordingly. A heat pump today, these systems maintain 100% of their capacity down to like 5 degrees. So you never need to worry about certain types of heat pumps ever not having enough capacity to heat your home if they're designed correctly for it. So as we just talked about, a heating system like an automobile will work in a lot of different ways. All of these things have benefits. All of these things, whether it's like a steam radiator, the benefits is that the distribution's 100 years old and will probably last another 100 years old. With a forced hot air system, it could be tied to, it could be tied to central AC, and it could have a really low install cost with adding central air. Hydronic systems, the benefit of those is you can easily retrofit them to also be able to heat up your domestic hot water. And if you have like a good hydronic boiler, you now have a relatively efficient domestic hot water heater. So that there's nothing right or wrong about any of these systems. They all have their pros and cons. The big advantage with a mini split, as far as how it works, is just it's like a futuristic level of control compared to, I guess, what you're used to. With running 1,000 mass save energy assessments, the question that we always started with is like, where do you have comfort issues? Everyone has comfort issues, with traditional systems, because there's just a lot of complexities with getting those distribution systems right. With mini splits, if sized correctly, you typically end up with multiple zones, individual controls, and absolutely precise regulation in how the system is heating up the home. So there's how the refrigerant flows to the units, how the air inside of the room flows over it. And if you do find that it's a little bit off in one room, a lot of times they have either a wall-mounted wall-mounted thermostat or remote control, and you just bump it up a degree, and now that room is going to be perfectly comfortable without changing any other attributes, any other spaces in the house. So the distribution on a well-designed heat pump system, it really does blow all of the other systems out of the water as far as performance. What's so good about heat pumps, other than the modern controls and functions? A few other things that I think is really important for this one, particularly for Cambridge residents and just the density of the housing. If you are going to be if you are interested in a cooling solution for your home, air source heat pumps run quieter than pretty much anything else on the market. I have a few different, I found this picture over here and a few different charts, but I did want to highlight some things. So with the indoor units, they run between 20 and 30 decibels for most of the units that aren't, there's some indoor units that you could size one gigantic one for the entire home, and that unit may be running at like 40 decibels, but typically between 20 and 30 decibels. It's, sounds like a whisper. Outdoor units significantly quieter than what I think a lot of people are concerned about, where it'd be like the kind of the entry-level central AC, where it does sound like a train going by when some of those units start up. And the other thing that helps out with noise levels is that the outdoor unit, it hardly turns on and off if sized correctly. It just ramps up and ramps down, ramps up and ramps down. And it's really, really an improvement, I think, over what people are used to with central ACs. And I guess talking about central ACs a little bit more, so just compared to the other technology with trying to cool the homes, the advantages with a mini split or with any air source heat pump is just the efficiency of it. So a lot of these units, the efficiency of them is at least double of a window AC. And then you don't have a lot of the compromises that you do with window AC with not being able to lock your window, not being able to use that window for ventilation, and things around that nature. So as far as cooling goes, these units that's why most people originally adopted them 10 years ago, is because it was just a really remarkable cooling solution. Now, as the technology has evolved, the heating side, I think, is what's getting a lot of attention. And the last important thing that I think is really increasing to a lot of adoption and awareness of these systems is the ability to zone. So we already talked about the precise multi-room zone control, but oftentimes there's a finished basement that may have an electric resistance heat, or maybe a finished attic that never got tied to the existing distribution system. Just putting in a single zone up there or down there is a really good option as well for just kind of getting that one space, exactly how you like it and kind of tied into the rest of the home. All right, so what does a heat pump look like? I just want to kind of go over a few of the different configurations of heat pumps, and we'll talk a little bit about what makes a ductless mini split. So these are the variation of ductless mini splits. So they can go mounted up high on a wall. Say if you have a finished third floor, there may not be really any wall space. So they do have floor mounts, which is the size of kind of like a standard column radiator, which can blend in with certain indoor aesthetics a little bit better than, something kind of mounted high up on the wall. And then there is also variations of ceiling cassettes as well. So if you do have an unfinished space above you, like an attic, these units can be installed along the ceiling. If you are ever doing like a deeper renovation, the ceiling cassettes can become a reality for that project as well. So if you're a condo and you're gutting it and it's on the first floor, ceiling cassette could be an option there. But there's a whole other sister category of air source heat pumps. So it's like air source heat pumps on the top, and underneath it is like ductless mini splits, but there's another one called ducted mini splits. And with a ducted mini split, it comes in a few different varieties. So, and all of these things can also be mixed and matched too. So you don't have to go all one or all another. For a lot of multi-zone heat pump projects, they're tying in a combination of these systems to meet the goals of the homeowner. So the discrete ducted is usually just like able to serve one or two rooms. There would be supply vents coming off of it, as well as a return vent that's bringing the air from the home back into the system. They have a step up from there that would be called like a medium static unit or like a horizontally ducted one. But these units have enough kind of like oomph of the fan that it's able to effectively push air throughout all of the ducts of an entire floor. Which is really important when we do get into some considerations about like, should I be putting in a ductless mini split in each and every bedroom, or, you know, everywhere where I currently have a radiator? That could be a lot of indoor units, and sometimes these medium static units are a little bit better of an option. And the last one over on the right-hand side, these central or whole home ducted systems, these systems are amazing, and that's what the Strawberry Hill customer had, because these systems are really easy for homeowners and HVAC professionals to almost do like a one-for-one swap from their traditional oil-fired furnace or gas-fired furnace. Whether or not the existing ductwork is worth hanging on to, but these systems use the same type of ductwork that we've all, I guess, like grown up with, kind of like bigger, chunkier. But what's nice about these systems is you can have really robust air filtration as well. So these systems would like start as like a MERV 13 air filter, and you can go up from there. You can put in like ultraviolet lights, like all of those things. I don't ever typically recommend like humidification into the ductwork, but if your house is unbelievably leaky and you can't seal it up for one reason or another, and you're suffering nosebleeds in the wintertime, like maybe adding a little bit of moisture into the air would be nice. With this type of a system, you can kind of plug in all of the bells and whistles that people, you know, have gotten used to with kind of like premium HVAC equipment. But it's all still tied to a heat pump. It's not burning any fossil fuel with these options. So can I get rid of my existing system? This comes up a lot, and I think a lot of people are reaching out when systems are reaching near the end of their life, and a lot of consideration should be going to this for a few different reasons. And I think this is where I stand today on this, but every home is different, and that's why I do really stress the, you know, cambridgecleanheat.org, and then click the, you know, start a consultation, because every home is different. Every homeowner's goals are different. So if you want to replace your existing heating system, well, you need to first make sure that we get a accurate heat load report. But these systems in Cambridge, which typically has like smaller footprints, there's a lot of condos, as we saw in the poll. Once you're sizing like mini split systems or heat pump systems, and you're reaching like that 24,000 BTU mark, which the HVAC installer would say like 2 tons, you're really close already to likely having enough horsepower, enough capacity that you will not need your existing heating system. So in this type of a case with replacing it, like I would, if you're already like looking at the number of indoor units and you're already at like 24,000, you're probably really close to having enough capacity for that heat pump to be 100% of your heating load. And why I'm talking about all this and what I have down below is the number of indoor units often will inform this how large the outdoor system, which has the capacity on it, is. So say that you do want to have 4 indoor units. Well, with this particular manufacturer, once you have 4 indoor units, you're already looking at a 3-ton system, a system that has 36,000 BTUs. And if you live in a 1,200 square foot condo, that's probably more than enough that you already need. So whether or not you intended to replace your heating system with like 4 indoor units tied to this outdoor unit that supplies 36,000 BTUs, you can pretty much get off of fossil fuels and not need to worry about it. The other adoption strategy is if you are just, say, getting a smaller size unit, say that you are just interested in 2 units, one for the master bedroom and one for the common area on the first floor, that's likely not going to have enough horsepower to meet your heating load when it's like 12 degrees outside. But there's still likely an opportunity to use that heat pump to displace a portion of your fossil fuel use. So you may find that it's going to be acceptable and there would be enough horsepower to never turn on your boiler, your furnace, when it's fall and spring and mild winter days. And I can help you kind of navigate all of that. And one thing that is hugely important, and I think is true from what we saw with the absolute disaster that happened in Texas related to resiliency, as well as even with the gasoline pipeline being the one source of gasoline for all of the southeastern United States, redundancy is good. But I do think, so I have no problem with old mechanical equipment sitting in the basement. I do just think that redundancy is good, but kind of complexity isn't. So if you are ever kind of getting enough horsepower for your home, I do really think that the best recommendation is just use your heat pumps as much as you can. And just kind of like let the existing system sit down there. Maybe a board goes bad on the heat pump and it needs to be replaced and you're down with heat for, a day or two until it can get serviced. It's great to have a backup system, but I wouldn't, if you have enough horsepower, just use the heat pump and just, let the past be the past. Are they affordable? And this is like the hardest thing for me to talk about, just because the contractor marketplace is, people can get what they can get for it. In certain contractors, they see Metro Boston, and they're going to charge more than you would see it in Central Mass. Also, and this is true not just for HVAC, but for all of the trades. For anyone who's tried to do any home improvement over the past year in Cambridge, they're probably aware of this. But I'm going to try and do my best to really provide some transparency on like what you should be looking at and what you should be looking for. So say that you just wanted to put in a single unit. Single unit, I see those costs come in on average between $4,000 to $6,000. There's nothing wrong with attempting to heat this home with a single unit. The problem, I think, is that like if you didn't grow up with a wood stove as your main source of heat, you're going to probably find that the bedrooms, being a 5-degree temperature difference or 10-degree temperature difference in the middle of the winter from the living space, may be extremely uncomfortable. But for some people, that may be perfectly fine. It may be how they grew up with. So there's nothing wrong with this strategy, but for a lot of people, this isn't what they're going for. The next kind of design strategy, and just to give you an idea of cost, would be what we're trying to educate people to not necessarily not do, but be conscientious of the choice that they're making and how it impacts the system's performance. But if you're putting in a unit in every space that you have a radiator existing in the home, the system's going to likely end up being oversized, and you're not going to come as close to that 2.7 coefficient of performance. This system, when you're putting in a unit in each and every bedroom, is going to cost, I think, a bit more than some of the other options. But the advantages of this is each and every one of those rooms is going to have, the exact precise temperature control. I think that we'll talk about some easy fixes for this in a second, but typically in my mind and in my lens, kind of the best option for this type of a home, it may cost a little bit more than what we just looked at, or it could be right around the same price, would be to just stick one larger unit to cover the entirety of the living space. And then for the 2 smaller bedrooms, just use a second unit that's ducted. So each of those bedrooms is going to have a supply vent. There's probably a way to also duct it into the bathroom, and then there's just an air return in the common area that's just kind of cycling everything through. But once again, this may be outside of someone's budget, but this would provide, I think, excellent energy efficiency and excellent comfort. I think a lot of people end up with something around this nature, though. This type of a system would cost $8,000 to $12,000 off of a 2-unit multi-zone, and it may be a little bit weird for some people in attendance to see, hey, there's not a mini split inside of one of the bedrooms. But I'm sure that there's also some people in attendance that had a very noisy steam radiator, and they've had it turned off for the last few years, and they don't notice a single temperature difference of comfort in that bedroom when the steam radiator was running and when it's not running. So with people adopting energy efficiency, and what I mean by that is like high performance windows and insulating your walls and insulating your ceilings and preventing uncontrolled air leakage coming in through the basement, homes retain their energy reasonably well compared to what they did. So if you're just putting in 2 units and there's not catastrophic air leaks and heat isn't just freely flowing through your walls, the heat from the heat pump, whether or not it's located right in that room, has enough time to migrate into the space before it's lost to the exterior. So personally, for my home, I suffered from a very noisy steam radiator in the master bedroom that was turned off all winter. In my daughter's bedroom, she had electric heat that we never turned on all winter. My house is well weatherized, but we didn't notice any temperature difference, and we are feeling comfortable with our mini split design to not include a mini split in her bedroom or in my son's, but we're getting one. So I do think that like keeping costs down, keeping performance up, this is something to be aware of. You don't have to do it, but do know that this is a real option that's worth pursuing. As far as what these systems will get you, how much they're worth, like that you get in rebates, it's complicated and it's always changing. Mass save for gas customers, there's not a ton of money with the DOER, but with mass save for oil and propane and electric resistance, tons of money for these things. The Mass Clean Energy Center is just wrapping up a really great pilot for air source heat pumps that was putting a lot of money to this. DOER, they have alternative energy certificates that will get you money back on it. All of these things are like being administered by different companies. So Clear Result is like kind of handling all of the mass save stuff. ICF is handling all of the renovations and new constructions. We're kind of like in the middle with just trying to work with all of these organizations. And we do just try to help you out with kind of understanding if you are adopting it, what it'll get you. And there is a $500 federal tax credit, which should be on here as well. Can a heat pump really be used in our climate? Yes, 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 yes. I pulled 3 different manufacturers. So over here, it's like Mitsubishi, Fujitsu, Bosch, but LG, Samsung, Panasonic, Carrier, all of those manufacturers do have equipment that will perform and maintain like 100% of their capacity down to the single digits. Some of these manufacturers, their equipment will maintain 100% of their capacity down into the negatives. I just received an email like an hour before the start of this with a customer or the Cambridge resident who put in a heat pump and didn't understand the difference between between a standard type of heat pump or mini split and a cold climate one. And she installed the standard one, and she had just written to me just an hour ago, just let people know that heat pumps can pretty much replace their existing system if they get a hyperheat model. Maybe that's favoring a company, but like all of the manufacturers have this, but you do need to insist as you are exploring your options with HVAC professionals that this is the direction that you want to go. Even if it's not like what you're like, even if you have a perfectly good gas boiler down there, when that system reaches end of life, it'll be so much easier on the next upgrade cycle, knowing that you already have, at least part of the equation as far as, heating horsepower or capacity covered, and you don't need to buy more redundant equipment. You could just add maybe an extra 2 zones to your mini split system, and then you're going to be all set. The impact of adopting heat pumps today, I want to be very transparent about what these systems cost in today's market, but I want to also highlight that fuel prices fluctuate. Home heating oil in the past year has been as low as 90 cents in Massachusetts, and right now it's probably about $3.50 a gallon. The other thing that I wanted to just talk about is I'm not showing the distribution losses of any of the gas systems, the oil systems, or propane systems. And for a furnace, that could be 20% or 30%, or it could be airtight ductwork and 5% losses. But like a steam system, 40% of the energy is pretty much lost through the distributions, through all of the steel and cast iron, and heating that all up to 212 degrees. But this is what the numbers look like. This is like the equivalent of like 600 gallons of oil or 700 million BTUs over the course of the year. A lot of technical information over here, so I put it in a chart. So over the course of 20 years, this is what it would look like. So over the course of 20 years, a gas boiler or a furnace would cost $20,000 if fuel prices are locked in today. Say a well-designed air source heat pump, if fuel prices are locked in today, it may be closer to $30,000. But the emissions between the two systems is about 40% less. Compared to the other fossil fuels, air source heat pumps winning, okay? So I want to stress this. Right now, air source heat pumps, they're more expensive to run than natural gas. But this is really huge. If your building has the opportunity to adopt on-site renewables, it completely changes the equation. So with the city of Cambridge, with sunny Cambridge, they make it easy and help people and help hold the customers' hands through their partnership with Energy Sage to adopt solar PV on their rooftop. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is the cost of solar PV. For adopting it, it keeps falling and falling and falling. And I'm sure you've seen these stories on the news, but like real world with Mass CEC data, in 2008, it cost about $8 per watt. In 2018, it was still about $4 a watt. I'm getting my PV through Tesla. Their customer service isn't great, but their PV was $2 a watt. A lot of these Energy Sage projects are coming in to $3 a watt. It's really affordable to do. So let's just keep that $2 a watt number real quick in our heads. This is what it looks like with adopting PV before the federal tax credits, state tax credits, the SMART program, all of those kind of adders. If you're just buying enough PV panels to power your air source heat pump systems, you need to buy probably with a well-designed system, about $15,000 worth of PV to have enough power to power a heat pump through a home that would use the equivalent of like 600 gallons of oil. Versus how many therms you would need to buy over the course of the lifespan of that PV system, you need to buy about $20,000 worth of therms. What's exciting about this is when you have the PV, and I know there's different definitions of like net zero and clean energy and things like that, but you can pretty much think that my air source heat pump system, my heating system, is no longer producing any emissions. So air source heat pumps plus PV, zero emissions, beats out all of the fossil fuels, and that's before all of the tax credits that you get from buying PV. So right now it's like a 26% federal tax credit, $1,000 through the state. pay, monthly payments through the utilities with the SMART program. It makes a lot of sense. So I'm excited about that, and I hope that's a real big takeaway. And even if you can't do that on-site renewables, this is, I think, one of the exciting promises with our grid and its transformation onto renewables, and the falling cost of those is hopefully, it is going to be helping keep the electric prices stable or even drive them down. How do I ensure my system is well designed? With the Mass Clean Energy Center, they've run air source heat pump programs and ground source heat pump programs. With pulling all of the data and looking at all of the retrofit projects, the best rule of thumb that I can get is 20 BTUs per square foot of living space. So if your house is, say, 1,000, or your condo is 1,000 square feet, my initial gut would be, you probably need about a 20,000 BTU system. Say that your home is 1,000 square feet and super duper leaky, I'd say, you probably need about a 24,000 BTU system. Or if it's high performance, a 16,000 BTU system. That's my rule of thumb. And one thing that helped inform this as well is we're running short on time, but I'm happy to get into the technical information on any calls. So the next slide, you shouldn't design heating system based off of some guy on the internet's rule of thumb. This is the responsibility of your HVAC contractor, and you should start every single consultation with saying, what do you do for your manual J calculations? Because this is the only tool in their tool bag to make sure that your heating system is going to be sized right. They should be taking a good measurement of all of the windows, all of the walls, exploring what you have for insulation in the attic, in the basement, and measuring the exterior perimeter of any room that's up against the exterior. And that will tell them exactly how much their home needs. So if someone walks in and says, you need a 3-ton system, I would not, I think that would be a good place to start for exploring the idea, but do not plow forward with the project before you get an accurate manual J calculation. And if you do get one, I'm happy to go look at any quotes and if you send me the report, I can look for like defaults and values and just any red flags. I once saw someone put in about 12,000 light bulbs to boost the load of a home. Where do I begin? Start with energy efficiency. Mass Save Program's best energy efficiency program in all 50 states, and it's been ranked that way for a few years in a row. I'm happy to help you understand the recommendations made by the Mass Save contractor and let you know how that would affect your heat pump design. Also with Mass Save, 0% interest loan, 7-year term, helps make heat pumps affordable. We have a handful of resources on our website. So we have a participating contractor list. We also the manufacturer's websites. If you do punch in your zip code, they'll refer you over to different contractors. Social media is a great way. Just search Facebook for mini splits or search it for ductless and see what people of your community said. They're oftentimes, saying who installed them, how much they paid, and that could be a really good resource. And with the Mass Clean Energy Center, all of their previous heat pump projects is all public record. So you can see all of the installers, how much the systems were sold for, and it's a really good way to make sure that you're getting make sure you're working with a contractor who does work in your area and the pricing is fair. So that was a lot. I have to fly through solar hot water. I do want to thank John Moore of New England Solar Hot Water, who did help me out with a few of these slides. And I'm sorry if I'm rushing through any of this, but I see 17 Q&A questions and we want to get to those as well and be respectful of your time. So why do we care about domestic hot water? Well, right now it's not the biggest load of the home, but we are driving down the load of homes through a variety of ways. So all the Mass Save stuff, but any new construction project, it's extremely energy efficient. Passive house, net zero, all of those trends in new construction, they're bringing down the heating and cooling load significantly. So it is really important that we are aware that at some point, the domestic hot water, which currently, accounts for about 25% of a building's energy load, isn't being accounted for by putting on exterior continuous insulation or putting in heat pumps. So we should really be conscientious about this like reoccurring energy load and making sure that we're thinking about clean heating technologies for that as well. As far as options for clean heating for domestic hot water, when you are thinking about decarbonizing, for traditional systems, there is a very wide variety of ways to heat up domestic hot water. So things that are built into your boiler, things that are off of your boiler, individual storage tanks that are vented into a chimney or vented to a sidewall, or tanks that don't actually hold any water that call for heat on demand. Like those are all things that are available and they all have their pros and cons. The clean heating technologies, there's only a few. So one is a heat pump hot water heater. So it has the same technology as a window air conditioner, but it's just on top of the domestic hot water tank. They can be favorable in quite a few homes. I had a customer today that they were running a dehumidifier down in their basement all year round. A heat pump hot water heater pulls the heat and it pulls the moisture out of the air in the basement and puts it into that tank. Could be a great solution for her. But they also cool down basements. They're also loud and they're also not really serviceable. They're kind of like, they're almost like disposable. So other alternatives is solar hot water, and a new product that's come online called the solar assisted hot water heater. So the options are with solar hot water is really this. So the traditional system that you would see now in most New England homes, it's flat plate collectors. Those are collecting the radiant energy of the sun, and they're just pumping that radiant energy of the sun straight into a solar hot water storage tank that will have either a backup element or integrate into your existing system. This type of a setup, typically, depending on the number of panels, it'll be about 70%, reduction in energy use. There's another type called the evacuated tube. These panels are more efficient. They perform a little bit differently as far as snow and things around that nature. Lifespan of the system is could also be a bit different too. Lori Beth had, I don't know if I was supposed to say the customer's name, the case study customer I was talking about earlier, she opted for the evacuated tubes, limited space on the roof, but she wanted higher production because there's a two-family, and that solar system is actually feeding both Unit 1 and Unit 2's domestic hot water use. So it seemed like a better design for her. So just know that there is options as you are exploring solar hot water. This is really exciting. There's a new product category called solar assisted heat pump water heaters. And this is really using pretty much the exact same type of technology that you'd have with a ductless mini split or an air source heat pump, but instead of outside having like a fan that's blowing over the refrigerant coils, it's just using like a flat plate and having all of the refrigerant in these really thin kind of tubes. And those are just able to go and collect the heat and the radiant energy from the sun, but also the ambient energy from the outside air. These systems are going to be comparable to a heat pump hot water heater, but they don't have the somewhat unfavorableness in some conditions of extracting the heat from your basement and putting it into your hot water, because a lot of times in the winter, we would prefer our basements to be slightly warmer. So how much does it save? I already touched on this briefly and I'm running up on time. With the solar assisted systems, 50%, with a traditional solar hot water system, 70 to 80%, depending on the types of panels that are opted for. But yeah, all of these things, if you have an electric resistance heat pump hot water heater, please reach out to me right away, because these technologies will save a massive amount of money. And as far as costs for solar hot water systems go, they definitely cost a bit more than your traditional hot water tank, but the federal tax credit is on these products, so 26%. Massachusetts has a really good tax credit. The alternative energy certificates through the DOER's program, it really does help bring it down. And these products as well are Mass Save Heat Loan eligible, so you can finance them 0% over 7 years. And the solar hot water heater installers will talk to you a little bit about this, but everything about the system is unbelievably rock solid. The panels last for 30 years. The tanks have like lifetime warranties. So yeah, it's going to cost more than a standard replacement tank, but that's a one-time cost. You're not going to be needing to replace it over, 10, 15, 20 plus years. So a lot of lifespan out of the system. So I thank everyone for learning with me, learning from me about these clean heating technologies. We're going to head over to the Q&A section now. And I know that we're trying to end this on the sooner side, but we will get to all questions. If we can't get to them in person on the webinar right now, we'll be sending out an email to all the participants with all of the outstanding questions that I may feel a little bit more, need to think a little bit more thoroughly on.
All right, so taking a look at the Q&A, it looks like most of the questions that we received were pertaining to heat pumps. So I think we can go chronologically here and try to maybe consolidate a little bit. So we touched a little bit on the effectiveness of heat pumps in cold climates. Sarah is wondering about installing heat pumps and leaving existing radiators in place rather than having to put the cost of removing those. Talk a little bit about that, Mike.
Yeah, I would recommend don't rip anything out unless you're crunched for floor space or you are tying the heat pump system into a deeper remodel. The existing system, it's definitely doing no harm. It's definitely doing there's no harm with having the existing distribution system and the existing heating system hanging out down in the basement or along the walls. There may be a future heat pump technology that maybe it could be tied into, but that's not market ready in the US at least.
Right, in that same vein, there's a question about disposing of old steam radiators. So if you are looking to do that, is there a quick one sentence answer on how to go about doing that?
Oh, any scrap metal guy you would make his day if you said that you were getting rid of them.
Great.
Yeah, but yeah, and they weigh so much, and I'd recommend hiring a professional before trying to move any of those things up and down any 100-year-old staircases.
Great. We have a question about potentially having someone come out to a home to look at a home and assess its suitability for air source heat pumps. Could you talk a little bit about sort of what your process is for looking into the home's data and how you would assess a home for suitability?
Yeah, so one of the things and Nikhil talked about this earlier with the work that they're doing in energy efficiency, but we have excellent relationships with a lot of the Mass Save contractors. So one of the things, if you haven't taken advantage of that program, I'd recommend a contractor, and I'd likely recommend a particular energy specialist as well, who will help me, get some eyes on the full potential opportunities for the home. So that's one thing. When you do the virtual consultation with me, I do set it up over Zoom, and it's not necessarily like look people in the eyes. Well, that is nice, but I'll be pulling up resources to kind of help illustrate certain things. But I also like to go on tours. So earlier today, I had a customer who is interested in solar hot water. She brought me down to her basement. She didn't know what was down there for hot water. She had a gas combi boiler, and I was straight up with, these are the reasons why you want solar hot water, but as far as fossil fuels go, you have like the best system possible. So tours of, like popping on Zoom on your phone, showing me the rooms, that's all helpful. Just talking to me, describing the floor plan, I'll sketch it out. I like real estate photos. I use the Cambridge GIS to get the floor plan, the footprint of the home. So I can start kind of imagining, some potential things to be asking installers, and just trying to, set some, prime the pump for, maybe the conversation of putting a unit in each and every bedroom is likely going to cause the system to not run as efficiently, and two, it very well may scare you away with the upfront cost of the project. So really kind of just thinking holistically about the design. So I hope that answered that one, but it's nuanced for sure.
I'm sure this is another nuanced one as well. We have a question about how much an electrical bill would increase, and I think it might be better to think of that in terms of how it would compare to the existing heating fuel cost rather than thinking of it in terms of strictly an electrical bill increase.
Yeah, so I guess if you were to have, so let's just say, for example, that you had a $100 gas bill and you were heating with gas and you're heating with steam, and you adopted air source heat pumps. Your electric bill would probably be $95. So it's like, well, the heating with high efficiency electric is more expensive than heating with relatively cheap natural gas. Like if fracking was never invented, this conversation would be, you would save a ton of money compared to what fossil fuel you're using. So it's like, there is some nuances here. Or if like gas was properly regulated, you would be saving a lot of money. But so, yeah, it really does depend. So say if you have like you spend $100 in gas and you have like a brand new gas boiler with a hydronic system, $100 with the, brand new perfectly designed air source heat pumps, be about $130. Say you had $100 in home heating oil bill for the month, with ductless mini splits, it'd be like $85. So it really does depend, and all of these things like prices fluctuate. Oil has changed in price by 300% over the course of this 1 year. In the 10 years that I've been in this field, I've seen home heating oil be up as high as $4.75 and as low as 90 cents. With gas, I've seen it up to $1.80 and down to $1.20. So it's like, I'm trying to tell you guys an accurate story today, but the prices fluctuate. But the big thing is like, when you do look at electric prices over, over the last 50 years in Massachusetts, they've done this. They've just steadily, slowly increased. But all of the other fossil fuel prices have fluctuated. So I think one of the big takeaways with air source heat pumps, at least when you are adopting them compared to the fossil fuels, is at least your bills are going to be predictable. They're going to be competitive to the cheapest fossil fuel. And there's ways to bring it down. So the on-site renewables, best way possible. But there's other things with the zoning. So say that you aren't using 2 out of the 3 bedrooms because the children have moved out or gone to college. Well, you can just leave those doors closed. You don't have to heat that space. But with most central heating systems, they have central distribution systems, and there's no way to zone the home to save any energy. So yeah, it's nuanced. But yeah, it's I feel I'm like wicked cheap and frugal in real life, and like I'm adopting these, and I have a gas steam boiler. I also have a gas hydronic boiler for just a addition. But yeah, I feel very comfortable in my decision. And I think, the city of Cambridge wouldn't be promoting this, to send Eversource more money. I definitely think that it's, right on the affordability front and right on the carbon footprint front too.
We have a couple of questions here that I think are related. One of them is about the dehumidification aspect of heat pumps. If you could talk a little bit about that. And I guess not super related, but the possibility of heat pumps being integrated with hydronic systems, whether customers, or residents prefer a forced air system or a radiant system. If you could touch on those.
Yeah, so with the dehumidification one, is that one's easier to talk about. So with any heat pump, they'll have a mode button, and then it's heat, cool, or dry. In the dry, what it just does is it keeps the coils really, really cold, and then it just slowly moves air over the coils, and it just wicks away all of the moisture in the air, and it dumps that to the outside. And it works. It works like you would think a $5,000 dehumidifier would, extremely, extremely well. And as far as summertime goes too, like half of the reason why we're uncomfortable in our homes, the summertime, is the air temperature, and the other half is the latent energy. So it does pull all of that out, and it works really well. As far as the preference with forced air versus hydronics versus steam versus a wood stove, everyone has their preferences. A lot of, like, on paper, I think it's fair to say that hydronics are the most comfortable way to heat a home. But really, the problem is that most of the design, it's on a circuit. So like radiator one's 180, radiator two's 170, 160 before it gets down to the boiler. So everyone standing in the room with the 180-degree radiator thinks it's the best, most comfortable way to heat. But everyone in the room that's in the 160-degree radiator feels like they need to put a blanket on their lap or a space heater by their feet. So it depends. But one of the reasons people do adopt heat pumps is, in that room that has the 160-degree radiator, you put the heat pump in there, and you're putting it for cooling, and then you're taking the edge off in the winter time as well. Like, so there's nothing wrong with supplementing in addition to displacing and replacing as adoption strategies.
We have a question about what the lifetime of an air source heat pump system would be. What's the longevity of something like that?
Yeah, with most warranties, and every installer is different. And if if a non-reputable installer installed it, I'm sure it'll be a lot shorter. But most of the manufacturer warranties is 12 years, and I think 12 years is I think that's likely the minimum amount of life. It's the same thing, I think, with like automobiles. There's some people who, most cars can make it to 200,000 miles. Most people aren't going to 200,000. So I think 15 years is probably like, if you are thinking straight about this investment, I would say 15 years. But I have to, there's heat pumps that a lot of these systems are going to go for a lot longer than that. But routine maintenance is required on them. The ductless units, they are moving the air from inside of the room over the coils. Those coils can get gunked up. So indoor units need to be clean. Outdoor units are exposed to the element, leaves, bugs, rodents, sun, rain, snow, ice dam, like all of those things it's exposed to. So it should be checked annually as well.
We have a question here about Eversource and whether there's a program for installing heat pumps. The three things that I would think of touching on there are rebate, heat loan, and also that potentially there are mass save contractors who are equipped to do those installs. And we may have to cut it short here. We're at about 8:20 now.
Yeah, I think as far as the cutting it short, I'm happy to go either way. As far as with Eversource, yeah, there's no specific rebates through that specific utility. All of the rebates are related to mass save. Mass save is kind of the primary one, but the DOER, mass CEC, federal tax credits, all those things are a reality for Cambridge residents.
Ryan, I just wanted to note that we have one person who's raised their hand and is asking a question via phone. So maybe I'll go ahead and unmute Susan, if you want to share a question. Okay. Why don't we take 2 more questions if that works for you guys?
It looks like Susan may have joined.
Oh, I had a question that I answered myself. I didn't know what PV stood for, and you kept talking about PV, but I realized it was photovoltaic. Was that right?
You nailed it. Yeah, I apologize for any other acronyms that I may have used freely without explaining. But yeah, the other one that I think I used wildly was BTU, which is British Thermal Unit, and then also ton, which is 12,000 BTUs. But I think those are the ones I'm most guilty of.
Not too guilty.
Thank you, Susan, for your question. I guess, Ryan, next one.
Sure. So I think we have 2 that I'm seeing. The first is about how you would space a condenser unit in a tight space living in Cambridge when you have homes next door and there's not even enough space to put a trash can.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. And it's a tricky one. So they can be mounted on walls as well. So they don't need to be sitting on the ground. And there's always some discussion of whether or not it does make the most sense to put them on a stand on the ground or actually mount them on the wall. So, well, Cambridge doesn't have a lot of outdoor space. There is often more front balconies and back porches than I think in other residential construction. So those are all opportunities, but it really is talking to the installer. There is also nothing wrong with installing them up on a flat roof, but a lot more considerations need to be made as far as roof rights and how we're running those refrigerant lines down and whether or not the roof should be replaced first before you're installing any mechanical equipment up there. But yeah, I think that it works. There's challenges with every house, no matter the shape, size, or geography of where it is.
We have 2 questions here that I think I skipped over earlier, so I do apologize for that. One of them is asking for clarification on the difference between ducted and ductless systems and how you would use those differently or maybe in conjunction with one another. And then the other question is about dual fuel whole home systems and how that would be used to either replace or offset existing systems.
Yeah, those are two questions I feel very passionate about. So the ducted and ductless, that's a good place to start. So if you're really concerned with aesthetics, and architecture and interior design are important, so you're not weird for thinking that like how my home makes me feel matters, ducted systems may be the best bet for you. It's going to be, what makes you feel happiest. You're not looking at the equipment. So there's definitely nothing wrong with putting ducted systems as your sole source of, system design. I like ducted systems from energy efficiency standpoint because, especially in Cambridge, a lot of Cambridge bedrooms are smaller. So as far as capacity goes, like the smallest ductless system provides like 6,000 BTUs. But if you do that heat load report, that manual J heat load report, we may find that your bedroom only needs 2,000 BTUs. That 6,000 BTU system operates extremely efficiently between 3,000 and 6,000 BTUs. But your bedroom needs 2,000, so it's outside of the range. So then that system's going to be turning on and off, on and off. And I talked a lot about a well-designed air source heat pump system. I didn't talk a lot about a poorly designed air source heat pump system, but that's what I'm talking about with that. So a ducted system would have the ability to take that 2,000 BTU bedroom and another 3,000 BTU bedroom, stick those two loads together, put that 6,000 BTU ducted system that modulates between 6,000 and 3,000 BTUs, and it's going to work perfectly and achieve those higher coefficients of performance. So that's like my take on it of why I think ducted systems should be in every contractor's playbook. In Massachusetts, though, ductwork requires a sheet metal license. A lot of traditional plumbing companies may not be carrying someone on staff with it, and the cost goes, the cost of the job goes up more than I think a lot of people are prepared for. As far as dual fuel goes, I think that—
Can I just jump in for 1 sec before we jump over to the dual fuel? Would you mind explaining in plainer terms what the difference between a ducted and a ductless system are, and what maybe those look like in terms of comparing to a system that a customer might be like familiar with seeing on a wall versus something that they're familiar with central AC, for example?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, that's a good. So well, the office that I'm in, it doesn't have an actual mini split, but what it has on the wall is just a register. Okay, so maybe everyone can see that. So that register over there, that's going into ductwork. That would be going into a heat pump, a small one, and that heat pump is tied to the outdoor unit. So the ducted heat pumps, it's the exact same technology as a ductless mini split, but they take off the plastic casing more or less. They add a blower, a larger size blower motor to it, and it just works the same way a ductless unit would, but you're able to like distribute it into more spaces.
So I think basically what the idea there is that a ductless unit is a unit that's directly connected to the condenser unit outside, and there's refrigerant running directly between them. Whereas with a ducted unit, you have an air handler that is, refrigerant is circulating to that air handler, and then that air handler is circulating air to a number of different rooms through ductwork.
Yep, you got it. So all of the outdoor equipment's the same, all of the refrigerant lines between outdoor to indoor is the same. It's just the means of distribution, whether it's being ductless on the wall or ducted in the basement or in the attic, and then using ductwork to get throughout all the rooms of the house. And so with the dual fuel, really quick, this does go back to the conversation about redundancy. There is an opportunity if you are worried about the outdoor unit being covered in like a snow apocalypse, or you are worried about polar vortexes, like those are real, they happen, and the outdoor unit is completely encased in snow or ice. Yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have an additional fuel source that's down in the basement. So that's where a dual fuel system comes in. So you'd have, like, say, a traditional gas furnace, and just sitting on top of that gas furnace is a central heat pump. And that central heat pump for most of those customers would be able to function as a central air conditioner. And then depending on the model, it could always be the primary, and you're just using that gas furnace for snow apocalypses, or you could be getting a cheaper type of a heat pump that does have a capacity drop off. So as it gets colder, the heat pump doesn't supply as much. And then you may find that, at some point, the heat pump can't keep up with the load of the home. So the gas furnace or the oil furnace is going to take over. Totally nothing wrong with that approach. But yeah, I've recommended it to multiple customers where, the concerns about, really extreme weather events feels concerning to them, because they've, been there since the, blizzard of 78 and all of that type of stuff.
Okay, so I think that's about it for questions. We do have one more question about comparing costs if you're installing a gas line. And I would just use this as a plug for if you have any specific questions about your own home and your own financial situation and your own goals for considering heat pumps or solar hot water systems, definitely schedule a consultation with Mike on his calendar at that link there, abodem.com/chat. It'll be a great opportunity to get more into the nitty-gritty of your own home and talk about your specific goals and how these technologies pertain to those. So I guess the question there, if we want to do one more, is about the cost of a natural gas line and how that compares to air source heat pumps.
So as far as getting gas put on from the street, the costs are so variable, it's hard to answer that with any generality. Sometimes when they're digging up the street and your home has home heating oil, sometimes they offer to do it for free. If you're trying to do it at like off cycle, sometimes you're going to be, needing to pay to repave, repave a section of the street. So that's really hard to say. But one thing that I can say is one of the nice things with, you know, not only do you have the gas cost, but you also have the venting cost as well. So if you are having like oil going up to the chimney and you're switching over to gas, and you want to use the chimney because you don't want to vent to the outside, you're going to need the chimney to be relined. If you are trying to vent to the outside in Cambridge, with the buildings oftentimes being, you know, stacked one after the other, there may not be really any place to be able to vent because you can't vent straight onto your neighbor's adjacent unit. So venting costs are real, venting concerns are real, and with air source heat pumps, you're not burning any fossil fuel, so all of that stuff, you know, disappears. But I guess it's the same challenges of like, where are you going to put the outdoor unit hold true for like, where are you going to put the exterior vent on like a high efficiency gas system. But yeah, especially in new construction, and this is very much true. New construction is like super duper pumped about air source heat pumps because they finally have a product that is cost comparable to natural gas, and they don't have to deal with all of the logistics, all of the excavation, all of the working with the city, the utility, bringing all of those things in, the venting, like all of those things disappear, and they're just, you know, with new construction, that all is like 200 amp service, so it's like there's plenty of room to tie into the panel. So it does make things easier. Like it's called Cambridge Clean Heat, and I do think that clean is like, you know, really related to like all of that, you know, venting, natural gas, infrastructure, pipe links, you know, methane leaks, all of that. It's like with heat pumps, that stuff disappears, and really as our grid's getting cleaner, it's going to become more and more of a no-brainer.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike, for the answers. I think maybe Nikhil will want to sign us off for the evening.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike and Ryan, for taking us through this, and thanks to everyone that attended for all of your questions and your interest. Like Ryan said, you know, if you have any interest in learning more, or you have a project in mind, or you want to explore a little bit, kind of wherever you are, really encourage you to just sign up for a time to chat with Mike at the link, or shoot him an email at the email address. But really, you know, we're here to help you explore those questions and get those answered. And yeah, we look forward to being in touch with you. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.